Good morning, Rachel, and good evening to where you are in the world. Thank you for being my guest here today.
Thanks so much.
Super excited, as I always am, but I have to share with my listeners because it's something pretty funny. We have two neurodiverse, amazing, incredible entrepreneurial women trying to save the world, and we could not get it sorted with the right time. I think this is the
We
third time.
eventually did.
We did.
We
It was
eventually
just really
did.
funny. And it happened this morning and I was really upset. And one of my daughters like, "Are you going to cry? Are you okay, Mum?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've messed this lovely lady up again. And I really would like her to be a guest. And I think it's going to work out." Anyway, we're here. We're here and
We're
it's
here.
going to happen. So thank you so much. Because it's very late over there. I think it'd be nearly 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
evening time. Yeah.
It's the end
Usually
of the week.
I'm usually coaching like to this time or later, but
Oh,
it
do
happens to
you?
be
Oh, my
I'm not.
goodness. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you for fitting me in. So, what I do like to ask everybody is, and this can be a bit tricky for people, but what would be your elevator pitch? What would you say to people if someone said, "What do you do?" Meaning your passion. We're going to really hone in on what you do, but if someone that didn't know you said, "What do you do for a living?" What would you say?
Yeah, so elevator pitch has always been hard for me because my
Mhm.
brain works like a movie
I
with every
know.
single detail. Yeah.
Totally, totes.
But after doing this for a while, I guess there's two things that I say. I say that I'm a preteen and teen anti-bullying coach,
Amazing,
a anti-bullying speaker and advocate,
amazing.
and an an author as well of my book Be
Mhm.
Who You Needed, which is up for an award potentially.
What's it called? You cut out a little bit then. What's it called? Sorry.
Oh yeah, my book is called Be Who You Needed, so I don't know if you're gonna
Oh,
have it beside me. Yes.
totally. I'm going to have to
Yeah.
purchase that. I haven't purchased that yet.
Okay, woohoo.
Mm.
So it's called Be Who You Needed. And then the last thing that I do is I actually am an educator. So I've been in education for over 20 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a while
It
actually.
is. Yeah.
But so I work by choice as a substitute teacher because
Yep.
most of
Oh,
my work is
beautiful.
with, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Most of my work is with preteens and teens, but I love hanging out with the kindies because they're so
Yeah.
magical,
Aren't they?
amazing. Yeah.
They are
Mhm.
because they're not, this is not an awful thing to say, but they're not um, touched too much by the big wide world yet. I think they can still be their authentic self to a degree.
Yeah, and that is actually why young children they've done studies in terms of their IQ level, in terms of their divergent thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
so they have the ability to just be incredibly wise and
Yeah.
intelligent and creative. And I love that. And most of my work is actually when I'm working with preteens and teens, kind of getting back to that space, and also with the adults that I work with. So yeah, no,
Wow. Amazing.
it's a
Well,
pleasure to
that's
work with.
amazing because you're in the space of all of the ages and they need you from when it
Yeah.
starts to when they get to adults. So
Yeah.
you actually explained that perfectly. So if I didn't know you, I would now know exactly what you do and what an incredible thing that all of these things that you do. So what we're going to talk about today is preteen and teen bullying, basically, because like I was saying to you before, I like to share my own personal stories because it feels like a connect to put other people that are going through it. And it does start quite young for some kiddos. It didn't really affect our children through primary school, so up to about 12. But then eldest is 19, youngest is 17. It started to really affect the 19-year-old the worst. Now, and she ended up being, I've talked about this a lot on my platform, and my daughter and I have done interviews. She was suicidal and it was horrific, really traumatic. I'm not blaming just the bullies for that, but it was definitely definitely part of her dislike for herself. And here in Australia, which I'm sure the percentage is huge in America, young.
I'm in Canada.
Oh,
So
Canada. Oh my gosh. Did I
it's
say
okay.
that? Oh, no, I know it's
It's
a bit
okay.
like,
I work with
no,
American
okay,
clients as
I'm
well.
so sorry, and I'm not offending Americans by saying this, but I do know,
No.
I know, but
Yeah.
here in Australia, we have
Mhm.
Australians and Kiwis or New Zealanders.
Yeah. And people, I know.
Totally. And I don't care. I love the Kiwis.
Yeah.
But when we travel, you know,
Yeah, you
usually
want to be.
yeah, so I understand. So I apologize.
And
You
it's
asked me that.
okay. Yesterday I had to get my MacBook looked at, and I went in and I thought, oh, this person's for sure from Australia. And I was like, oh, like Australian? And he's like, no,
Yeah.
British. And I was like, oh my God, I
Oh, it's even
lived in
worse.
Australia.
So
Yeah, I
close.
know.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, no problem. Don't
It's
worry.
so funny, isn't it? But yeah, cute. Okay, so Canadian. So now we're distracted. What I was saying. Oh, here in
You're
Australia,
saying, yeah, in
yeah,
Australia.
it is, you know, which again would be huge in America and Canada, I would say. Anxiety, depression is up like 50, 60%. It's like through the roof. But what is so horrific is the suicide rate from 10 years of age up
Yeah.
is just diabolical. It's just, you know, my heart breaks for the parents that have lost their children. And, you know, so something's amiss, isn't it? You know, like something is amiss that young kids are feeling like that's an option. So then me going through this myself with my daughter, and I thank every blessing day that she's still here. And it's hard for me to talk about without getting a bit emotional, because of the parents that lose their children. You know, I just think it comes down to, I don't know if it's luck or whatever, that one child is successful and one child isn't, you know, and that's a really awful thing to talk about, but that's the truth, you know? And so we need to talk about a big chunk of what's happening with these children is these other children bullying, and it's the intensity is getting so bad with social media and what they're saying and the things that they're doing. So we'll really ask you a lot about deep diving into that. So can you, I suppose my first question around that is, again,
Oh,
what
can I just
yeah,
interrupt
go.
for 1 second?
Go,
Okay,
yeah.
because I can feel your emotions. I'm just
Yeah.
going to turn off my
Mm.
notifications, but I can feel your emotions in
Mm.
that. And what I will say is the biggest thing as a parent is not to
Mm.
give up. And so if
Totally.
you're a listener and you are listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going
Yeah.
through,
Yeah.
you need to keep going until you find the help, the resources, the tools, the
Totally.
people. And that's the biggest thing that parents unfortunately don't always know, because
Mhm.
they have their own stuff and then they try to go and advocate possibly. And then if
Mhm.
they get, oh, we're working on it. I always say if they're working on it, it's not working. That's actually one of
Oh, I
my
saw that. That's what I was
famous.
going to say. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not working. And, you know,
it's
that's the
not
thing, you
working.
know, because you want to give you, especially teens, is
Hmm.
that it's such a hard time for parents. And again, I don't want people to be frightened if they're not quite there yet. You know, 12 to 13 on 16, 17, it is very, very challenging because you lose that connection that you had as a parent.
Mm.
They need to be independent. It is a normal reaction for teens to not want to be around their parents. They need you so much, but they push you away so much. So what you're saying is absolutely perfect, that it's not, if they're saying they've got it and it's not working, it's not working. So don't what's the word? Don't leave them to it. If
Yeah.
they're verbally saying to you, I don't need help, whatever, and it's not working, you've got to do something. You still got to do
Yeah,
something.
and I was more so talking about the school, but yes,
Oh,
also
okay.
like, so when the schools say, like, if you are a parent and you've advocated to the school, to the teacher, or maybe to the principal or vice principal,
Mhm.
superintendent, or I am not sure, school district, maybe what
Yeah,
you
it's
say
like
there.
we have deans and principals. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've advocated to like one or more of those people, and each time they're like, we're working on it, I always say if they're working on it, it's not working. So
Gotcha.
like,
Gotcha.
the kinds
Yeah.
of bullying is abuse, and the way that we work on that and advocate and stop it and redirect and kind of get curious is through a lot of different things, including
Okay.
restorative justice, nonviolent communication, right? So it doesn't
Wow.
take a lot to, like, most of the work that I've done in schools actually usually takes 5 minutes, really.
Really?
Yeah, it
Oh,
depends
I
on,
think
because
the
I work.
school's still lost over
Yes,
here.
and
Yeah.
so that goes back to educators not being trained properly and the
100%.
system not working. I'll also always say this: if you start actually kind of stepping back and thinking about, is it biologically possible for somebody to have on their own, well, I guess they'd have a partner, but on their own, a class or a family of 30, all the
Yeah.
same age,
Not.
and then do it on your own. Okay.
Totally not. And
Yeah.
teenagers.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
So, yeah, so the system, like there's a lot of things kind of systemically, and
Yeah.
then also society, and then what's happening like individually with the family, with the person, with the it's very complicated.
It's very complicated. And I suppose where
Yeah.
I was coming from, because it's exactly right, but the reason I sort of answered that way, because my mind went to what I went through with both children,
Yeah.
teenagers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll try to explain and to make it a bit clearer,
Mm-hmm.
it was such a traumatic time for me as a parent because you couldn't fix it, right? You want to fix your little baby's problems and you can't, right? So you've got teens that are definitely not adult, that their brains are like toddlers. But what I had, and I think when I speak to parents, often when they're having children being bullied, and this is what's happening in my little big school, they're getting bullied. The teens, so they could be 14, 15, 16, will not let you go to the school because of fear of the retaliation from the bullies, because the schools haven't got the tools that bully's going to stop, right? So we're going sort of quite further down the ladder there in regards to the pain that these parents are going through. So again, for me, the school was wonderful. We had a beautiful dean who kind of saved her life. For both of them, he was a really like the lighthouse that they could go to, but his hands were tied on so many sort of, I don't want to say political, but what he was allowed to do or not to do with the other children. It gets really complicated with this stuff. So to bring it back, if your teen is refusing for you to go to the school, what would you advise a parent to do?
Okay, so recently, so let me say this first of all. Anybody who's listening to this, I have
Yes.
a free resource. It's a
Oh, yes.
bullying advocacy kit.
Oh, yes.
So this kit came out of, I'm going to backtrack a bit. So the
Yeah.
reason that I did this work, okay, so the elevator pitch,
Mm.
which, yeah, so my like passion, my North Star, right? The
Yes, yes.
reason that I did this work, and if you take a look at my book, I'll hold it up again because I don't know if the people, but I'll describe it too.
Yes.
There's lots of bright colors, turquoise,
Yes.
yellow, pink, because I'm
Beautiful.
very visual, and
Yes.
my first degree was in art, so I love visual
Love
things.
it.
But there's also tiny little stars, and the
Yeah.
reason for that is because when I was a child, I was bullied from grade 1, so 6 years old, until
Oh,
the end of
gosh.
high school. So
Stop,
almost
that's
the
a
whole way through.
long time.
Yeah. So I always say that I had a couple years off, but in those years off, anybody who has gone through the abuse of bullying knows that that doesn't leave you. So I was just
Oh,
doing it to myself, even though no one was actively doing it for the 2 years,
oh,
but
you
it
did.
continued. So my North Star, I did advocate. My parents did try to get
Yeah.
help, and they
Yeah.
told boys will be boys.
That's right.
So then I remember watching, because children are highly intelligent. So
Mm,
I remember watching all the adults around me basically be like, we don't know what to do.
right.
So they just kind of left it, and kind of I felt like they pushed me into a gladiator ring without any like protection.
Totally.
And I was there for the rest of the time until I graduated high school.
Oh,
So I remember thinking I would cry myself to sleep, and I would look up at the stars and say, somehow, and trigger warning in terms of suicide, I'm not going to kill myself. I
yeah.
have to grow up and be the person so that no child goes through this again. So
Wow.
that's why it is like every party that I've been to, like people are
Totally.
kind of like, mucking about, talking
Oh,
about, I am talking about this. Like, this is
yes.
the thing that makes me, it's my main focus. It's all the
Totally.
work I do. It's my
Yeah.
why. So, all that to say that my parents have told me over the years, that they wish that they had me, that they needed me when I was young, meaning it's a little bit meta, but they
Oh, yes.
needed the work that I do now as a preteen and
Oh,
teen
gotcha.
anti-bullying coach.
Yes.
to support them
Gotcha.
with
On what to
me.
do. Yes. That's a
Yes.
perfect
So
answer. Yeah.
yeah. And so I was a little while ago, I had a coaching client that I absolutely adored. It was such a good match between us. And she had come to me with panic attacks and, you know, lots of anxiety. A lot of the clients that I work with have been through the mental health system,
Yeah.
and it isn't working for them for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Like there's
Yeah.
been some benefits, but it's not actually helping them to and this is not against all therapists at
No.
all.
No, 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 no.
When they come to me, they have often been hospitalized. Sometimes they've had suicidal
Yeah.
attempts, like different things have been happening, and it hasn't worked the traditional way. So then they
Yeah.
end up in coaching. So she
Yeah.
was just amazing. We were working together, and her panic attack stopped.
Oh,
And we were working on
wow.
anxiety. Yeah.
So
So
good.
I was like, great, this is going in a great direction. And we had been working together for a couple months. So my clients have access to text or voice note me in between sessions if they need something, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one day I get this text out of the blue. She never mentioned anything before this. And she said, I'm being bullied by a group of boys. So obviously this had been going on. And
How old was she, sorry? How old
she
at the
was
time?
she was in grade 8, so she was 13.
Wow, she never said
So
anything.
no, she never, and she told me a lot of things, but she never
Totally.
said a thing. So I was shocked. So immediately we got on the call and for her session, and I asked her what's happening. So she tells me this whole thing. There's this one leader in the group in her, like there's all the boys, and it's one main person, and he has gotten all the boys to now, you know, constantly bully her to the point where she has so much anxiety. She's terrified of how her hair looks. She was
Oh,
super athletic, so she was so afraid about being targeted that she's now, while she's playing, you know, her different sports, so distracted by how her uniform is fitting on her body that she can't focus on her sports,
oh
right?
my gosh.
So she's telling me all this stuff. So I say to her, look, we need to actually like write down what's happening. So I
Yeah.
start to ask her questions, and I scribe, and I end up coming up with this entire letter. I always say we need a different, I don't want to say the name of it, but it's the poop sandwich. So
Yeah,
it's like
right. Oh, you can say the word. I don't care. Yes.
well, I know
Shit
I'm so used to.
sandwich. She said shit sandwich.
Okay. So but we need a different name anyways. It's so
Okay, okay.
disgusting.
But it's a very Australian thing. We do definitely use it. But yes, explain
Okay,
that.
so you start with the positive, and then you talk about what you need to say, right? So I said to her, let's write a message to your teacher because he's not aware of this, and we'll start with the positive, even if you have to grasp at straws. So she starts with the positive. I really, you know, appreciate all the effort you put into teaching and making this class fun. And then you use the magical word. I wish I had like little chime bells,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
insert little chime bells,
yeah,
and you use
yeah.
the word and.
Not but
Don't
and.
don't use butts. Butts get people's butts up against the wall.
That's right. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so you know, I appreciate this, and I want to tell you this because I trust you.
totally.
And then she went into, and I asked her questions. I was scribing for her and typing it down for her as she's talking. And I said, how has this impacted your mental health? What's happening? I'm having panic attacks. I'm depressed. I feel like I hate myself. I don't want to live. So we write this all down. Okay. And then we end with, I need your help.
Yeah, beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
we finish it, and I think, great, like we're gonna give this to the teacher. And
Yeah,
she immediately, a huge part of her, right, like her internal kind of like system,
yeah,
gets scared and
yeah,
says, I don't want it to get worse and then retaliate and maybe
yeah.
called a snitch.
Yes,
So
that's what
then I
happens.
said,
Yeah,
so then I said, okay, why don't we get mom to get on this call? We'll talk through this because I do a lot of mediation as well
good
in
idea.
families.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so thank you. So I get mom on the call, and I'm thinking, right, as a parent, like you would be like, okay, yes, we need to submit this. But mom is not open to it. And so yeah, but I am all about kind of, okay, so the way that I get the way that I hold space for people, and I've learned this over the years doing this work, is I get really curious.
Yeah,
So she was kind of having resistance as well. So I got really
yeah.
curious, and after we talked for a while, it turns out she was bullied too.
Oh,
So she was scared of the same thing that her daughter was scared
Right.
of.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen? Is it going to get worse?
Sure.
So then I said, okay, because the daughter absolutely loved me. We had such a good
Oh, she
connection,
would trust you. Yeah, for sure.
but she wasn't liking me so much in this moment. And I said that to
Oh,
her. I said, I know you are upset with me right now,
yeah.
and I can't on my watch let this abuse go on. We need to
No.
do something, and we need
Yeah.
to do something till it's like stopped, right? So then we brought the dad in. And so the dad's on this call, and the three, what is that? The
Raise.
four of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
four,
boy.
because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
dad and her and me, so four.
Right.
Are all on this call. And the dad is saying, I agree with you, Rachel. I think that we should submit this letter. But, and he said, but I want to let my daughter decide because I don't want to push her, right? I
Yeah.
really want to
Well, that's
respect.
right. That's right. This is what
Makes
happens.
sense. You don't exactly.
Oh.
So I said, no, but
Oh.
stick along for the
Oh,
ride. Buckle
I
up.
know. I can't wait to hear the ending. I needed you. I needed you at the time. That's what I feel. But poor Donna.
It's
Okay,
a
go.
wonderful ending. It's a
I am
wonderful ending.
so glad. I'm sure it is. Okay, go.
Yeah, yeah. I actually, so just one thing to know about me too is my teacher name is Miss Rainbow Fairy. It's technically Miss Weinstock, but it's Miss
Oh.
Rainbow Fairy because in Matilda, the movie, Miss Honey is my biggest role model as a teacher because she's so kind. She's so just like holds such a safe space for
Yeah.
Matilda. So
Hmm.
that's my role model actually as a
Well, that's
teacher. So
beautiful. Yeah.
so I just want you to know that because there is a happy ending to this
I have
particular
no doubt.
story,
Great.
and
Can't wait.
it's had a huge ripple effect to other people. So
Right.
so the dad comes on, he's saying to me, I agree with you, Rachel, but I don't want to push my daughter. So I sat there and I thought, what would happen, I said to them, if your daughter had something like that was really serious medically and she needed to like have
Yeah.
medicine or surgery? What would you do? Would you just say like, okay, we're going to leave it? And they were like, okay, funny enough, last night she was really sick and she needed to take medicine, and we pushed her to take the medicine because
Yeah.
we knew she had to, right?
Yeah.
And I said, so here's an example. If you look at the statistics, right? If we leave her in
Mm,
this abuse, right?
mm.
And it is abuse, bullying is abuse, right? And so if we leave her in this abuse, the statistics in terms of mental health, in terms of addiction, in terms of abusive relationships, in terms of
Oh,
self-hatred, all the way out to like
oh,
jobs, like basically her light is snuffed out, right?
I
To some
know.
extent. So we want
Yes.
to actually not let this abuse go on. And we
Sure.
want to change the story. It's kind of like the train tracks. We want to redirect the train
Yeah.
tracks. Okay.
Yeah.
And we
Hmm.
want to really show her that we're going to fight together, that we're a team. I'll be on that team too. And we're going to figure this out together. So as soon as I said that, and I also am always not just being curious, but I also really want to give the space to allow people choice and autonomy,
Mm.
like all the
Totally.
time, like as much as you can, right? And
Totally.
I'm like that as a kindergarten teacher as much as I
Totally.
can, including like getting curious and including their voice and their consent.
And
But in
hearing
this
them,
point,
hearing what they're saying. Mm,
totally,
mm,
totally.
mm.
But in this moment, I said I had to actually put down a limit of like, we have to do something.
Good
Like,
on you. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, and
And
I
you built
had,
the trust. You'd built the trust with the daughter too. So you,
totally.
and I think the way that I think that we don't know other that well, but I feel that you would be someone like myself that everything is led by your heart and with goodness. None of it's to do with ego. None of it's to do with this has to happen. It's like, I need to save you. I actually need, so I can feel
Yeah.
it. I can feel that you are. Okay,
Yeah.
keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. You're doing great. You're doing great. I love how like I feel like you're on the edge of your
I
seat here.
am. I am.
Oh, I
Okay.
know.
Mhm.
So what ended up happening was I said, look, you think about it as a family. This is my recommendation. This is what I've seen over the years, what I know to be true is my lived experience. You need to do something and you need to push until you get somewhere, right? And so they talked about it as a family. They decided in this particular situation, the school had an anonymous thing that you could like submit. So they
Mm.
decided, the daughter decided, I will do it, but I will submit it anonymously, but I will name the ringleader.
Okay.
So she didn't say who she was, but she named him.
Okay.
And she also named, which I told her when I was scribing this letter, that was important because she was not just having it happen to her, she was witnessing them also target another boy. There was one other
Okay.
boy that, they were targeting.
Yeah.
So she names she names just the main person and I think two of his main friends that were doing this.
Mm.
So the next day she goes to school And over the intercom, they call out this one boy that was the main person. He's withdrawn from the class. No,
Mm-hmm.
anything withdrawn. Okay. So she's sitting there and she didn't tell anybody because she was so scared,
Totally.
right? So
She's anonymous.
yeah,
She's going to stay anonymous.
yeah. So, but she didn't tell her friends either, right?
Yeah.
So then he comes back in the classroom a little while later and she overhears him say, "Oh, I don't know what they're talking about. I didn't do anything to anybody." And guess what happened?
What?
That was the last time he ever bullied her.
Are you kidding?
No.
Oh,
So here's what I realized. Okay. We need a paper trail.
yeah.
I developed
Mm,
this advocacy kit based on all my lived experience, obviously, and all my coaching experience,
totally,
but based
totally.
on the story, based
Oh,
on the story, because I
yeah.
realized not everyone can access me, knows, like, it's just,
Oh, I
so
just think I want to fly you over now and go to every school
I'm
here.
yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I ended up creating this advocacy kit because I know that, there's like, I would love to be able to help every child in the world, right?
No,
And
of course.
there
Yeah.
right, millions of people that are going through this right now as we
Oh,
speak, right? And I
millions.
always say, and this is like morbid, but it's also true.
No.
We
Right.
as adults have blood on our hands
Yeah,
because there
I
are
know.
kids on that line. Some of them unfortunately lose their lives, or
Yes.
if you look at, especially in the States, gun violence, right?
Oh,
Or
totally.
other, so it's a lot of interconnected things of this abuse of bullying. And,
Totally.
so what I created was this step by step how to advocate in the school system
Wow. Okay,
based
that's
on the
amazing.
story.
Yep.
And I also added to this because I thought, one of the things that people take seriously is, unfortunately, like, it should just be a child tells you this, you believe them.
Oh,
It's literally like the Me Too movement for children, right? In
totally.
terms of bullying, but we're not there yet.
Not
So
at all.
people often think, oh, they're bullied, like it's not that big of a deal. It's child's play, but it's not. So I know that, living that for so long.
Totally.
And most educators, I would say, have some blind spots because they haven't lived it potentially, and they don't know it up
Oh,
front.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, but in this kit is also, if you don't have a therapist,
Yeah.
or a
Uh-huh.
psychiatrist,
Hmm.
psychologist, social worker, reach out to your doctor and
Okay.
ask. So in the template, there is actually a letter that you can bring to your doctor, your therapist, and say,
Right.
my child's being bullied. Can you write something similar to this? And it's
Sure.
editable. I don't know how to say that word properly,
Edit it.
but
No,
you
you
can
said it. Edit. Now you're thinking about it.
editable,
Yes.
editable,
You got it. You're
editable.
overthinking. You got it right first time.
It sounds fun to say,
I know.
editable. Okay, so
Editable.
you
Yes.
can
Okay. Go.
edit, you can edit it.
Yeah.
Each letter is like, you can edit it, right? So
Yeah.
it's like step-by-step guide on how to escalate if it's not working. Now, every
Hmm.
time this kit's been used so far, to my knowledge, it's been 100% effective so far.
Oh, 100. So
So
exciting.
it might be like what so far, that's what I know.
Yeah, it's great. It's
So
amazing.
I hope
And
it's
this
always
is,
100%
oh my God.
effective.
I actually feel so overwhelmingly relieved that I've found you. But like
Mm.
I'm going to keep saying it, I feel very sad for us we didn't have you because we had people trying to help, right? I have
Yeah.
been in the mental health world for a long time for a lot of reasons. I won't pinpoint why. But and I'm not medically trained in it, but I have very, very lived experience in
Mhm.
in mental health, right?
Mhm.
And so I had my own tools and was aware of what to do pretty quickly, which a lot of parents just don't because they don't understand mental health, not their fault. Didn't have it in their
Mhm.
families, not their fault.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
teenagers change, normal. They let them be.
Mhm.
So again, we talk about two different children. One was very open to me, very connected to me, wanted me to be her best friend at that time. So as painful as it was on reflection, it was easier for me as a mum because she wanted my help. And my
Mhm.
second beautiful daughter did not want anything to do with me. And
Mhm.
I have talked about this before, again, just on the parent side, is I had what I think was near on a nervous breakdown because I'm very emotional. I have tools, But what a nervous breakdown is, I think, because I think I nearly had it, if not had it, is it was years and years of stress on a whole different level, and I was trying to manage that. And something happened with my daughter, and my body went into the that level of like, you want to scream, that cortisol, heart pumping, eyes like that, because you're so upset. And then when the event changed, my body didn't come down from that. Now, I for hours, and my mum was going to take me to hospital. And I think that's what they say might be nervous breakdown, is your nervous system is so overloaded it can't come back down, right? So that's the severity of it. Now, why I'm sharing this story is because I know lots of parents are trying their hardest, and and I'm so glad I found you. But there's these walls all the time. There's these blocks, and people really care for you, but they can't go any further than what they can. And we were drowning. I kind of don't remember a whole lot of those years because it was sort of just survival mode. And I know people might get into this position, and not everyone's going to, so I don't want them to be scared, but I also don't want them to be frightened that they're by themselves. But again, this advocacy kit and finding you will help them so much. It's like a bit like a dot point trail of what to do in a really challenging
I feel
time.
like I'm holding someone's hand and bringing them. Yeah. But I also have something for parents that want to connect with their child, and their child is putting up.
Well,
I'm making a lot of free resources so I can
love it. I love it. And the thing, getting back to that too, because she's out on the other side of it. So, sunshine and roses this week, but it's not really, that's a joke. But, it was hard for me. And what I always advocate for here, and trying to, on my platform, talk about this the best I can, is that family counselling, right? So here in our little Perth town, it's a beautiful town, but we limited sources, right? And so people are going to psychologists, yep. But the second child, it didn't work. And we found a really great psychologist, and she was so amazing. And my daughter was like, because it wasn't working for her, right? And so then I was getting frustrated, didn't know where to go. We ended up getting family counselling, and that changed everything. And it took years for us to retrain ourselves as parents to not traditionally parent and try to be connected. Now, I've been trying to connect. She didn't really want to. Sometimes still doesn't want to, but it's more about us parents going, okay, I won't get hurt. But where I'm going with this is, in one of those family sessions, she just turned around to me and she goes, will you stop caring so much? So I went, okay, I didn't do that in my head. That was my gasp in my head. But what she was doing, without anger, she wasn't being mean to me. And then afterward processing and talking to the counsellor, she basically saying, back off. Don't back off completely, but back off enough that I want to come to you. And so that was years ago. And so I know I'm rambling a bit, but it's not always going to be easy. You might have a child that wants to connect. You've got another child that doesn't. What I'm trying to say is, don't, like you said before, with the child that doesn't want anything to do with you, do not go away. Do not just think, oh, well, they don't want me, then I'm just going to leave it, because that will cause really awful situations. And the other thing is, not only did she not want me, she was also not very nice, right? So if I wasn't the person that I was, I think some parents would just be offended and just go, oh, well, all right then. But I did not give up. And our whole family, our whole dynamics of, it's not what I imagined, white picket fences of, your children are going to be like, but I don't have any expectations for that. And I just love my girls so much. They are everything to me. And I know that's every parent, but also they're going to be who they are. And that's not my decision. So whatever choices they're going to make, and it's safe and whatever, is enough. So that was a lot in that conversation, but from a parent who's been through it,
Yeah. So, a couple of things that I would say. So one is, I have another free resource that I've developed exactly for this. So
Amazing.
one of the things, so like the unique thing in terms of my approach, and it's why I have so much success with mental health and anti-bullying coaching, but it's not just, so I work with the young person, but if the parents and family are open to it, then I do a lot of mediation within the family, because the tools that so between me and the client, I have tools that a bunch of things in my toolkit, but we will also discover things that actually work specifically tailored to them. And sometimes in these mediation sessions, I'm able to, you know, translate actually what, you know, the child needs so that the parent can actually hear them. And then
Totally.
also that the parent can actually hear the child and the child can actually hear the parent. It
Totally.
takes a neutral person, and you know this from family counseling,
Totally. We would
to
never have
create.
got where we're at ever
Right.
without beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. We had two family psychologists, and they were very patient,
Yeah.
and very kind, and for us to hear everybody's views, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, you've explained it beautifully. And I think, like you said, it's great to work with the young children, but I really feel us parents
Mm-hmm.
need to be supported and guided and open
Yeah,
to
so this is what I
change.
was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what I was going to say is that so a lot of times people will find me and they'll be like, "Oh my God, you're amazing. I want you to work with my child." And
Mhm.
I always before I take on a client to work with them, I want to make sure that that client actually is choosing me, right? And that
Right.
it's a good match. Because
Totally.
a lot of times parents will find a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, a whoever, and the child is not part of that process. And so that is part of a really integral part of the foundation of my
Yeah,
coaching. So
totally.
they, you know, have a discovery call with me, see if they like me. I mean, I've never, out of the
I know.
hundreds of calls that I've ever had, no one's gotten on
Totally.
the phone, said, "Rachel, I hate you." But I always want to make
Yeah.
there a yes, because,
Yes.
you know, that, yeah. So, and sometimes parents will say, "My child won't even talk about this with me, so I'm
Totally.
afraid to bring it up." And
Uh-huh.
so I have, in this case, and it can be used in whatever way, a template for a letter to connect with them and tell them, because you are
Oh,
watching as a parent,
yes.
them shut themselves in their room, go
Totally.
on social media, hate the way that they
Totally.
like
Oh,
struggle, be depressed, all the things, right?
yep.
All the things, be so lonely, they have no friends, like just
Totally.
everything.
Yeah.
So this letter helps you to actually write it out so that they're
Mm.
not feeling confronted. They have their own
Yeah.
space to process it. So that's also another free resource that I
Great
created out
idea.
that I hear with parents, right? Of
Yeah,
like,
amazing.
and then the other piece, what you were talking about with that, can you just care less, right?
Mm,
Um,
mm.
it's actually interesting. It's care and then less. So they just need more spaciousness, right?
Yes.
So a lot of times, you know, what I'll hear from young people that I work with is, I feel like I'm being interrogated by my parents. So
Totally.
yeah, so here's what you can do as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Your care is amazing. And also, you need to get curious on what your child needs. You
Totally.
don't want to do, there's so much top over of like, you need to do your homework,
Mm,
you need to
mm.
get, you know, so young people don't have a lot of autonomy. And
No.
if we've ever been in a job where a boss is like, do this, do that, we
Yeah,
start feeling disrespected. But we
totally.
forget that as adults towards children, right?
Totally.
So the more that we can attune and get curious. So I'll give you another example. Yesterday I had a client, and they were they're gifted and they're doing really amazing in school, but in this one particular class they got a lower mark because they're absent, didn't get the proper notes. So their mark in this class has gone down a bit, and because they want to get a scholarship, they're in the States, they have to maintain a really high mark for
Mhm.
every other like test and, you know, assignment, in order to get this like level for
Yeah.
college like scholarships. So I asked them, "How's it going this week?" And they said, and so I'm watching their body language and their tone. I was like, okay, and I'm really calm with my tone, right? So I'm regulated when I'm asking them, like, what does that mean? So they said, well, I haven't, like I basically leave things to the last minute because usually I can do that. But right now, because of this mark and my need to have it higher, my usual like approach doesn't work. So I said, so what do you think would be helpful here? And then they were like, well, I probably should start studying. I was like, well, you don't have to should on yourself. And if you start studying tonight, would that be helpful? So see how I'm like phrasing
Yeah.
it in
The
the
wordings. Yeah.
question?
Totally.
Right. It's such a small switch, but it means what I'm communicating to this client, right? Or to this human really, is I trust in you. I believe
Trust.
you
Yeah.
have wisdom,
Yep.
that you can actually take back your power. I'm not going to shame you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to just get curious and hold space for you so that you can reflect, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not in a way that's annoying, like in a way that's like genuinely curious. So a
Yeah.
genuine
Yeah.
like, okay, so what do you want to do? So then they said, okay, I'm gonna do the studying after I get off this call with you. And I said, great. Would it be, again, with the questions, would it be helpful if I checked in with you tomorrow? I'll put it in my calendar. And they said, they took a moment and they paused, reflected, and then they were like, yes. And I said, and then they said, would it be okay if you message me at night, because I have my cell phone in the day, but if it dings, like in terms of a text, it gets taken away in school. So I said, great, I'll write myself a message. I will message you in the evening, which actually I have to do
Oh
after this
God.
call.
Okay, great.
I just remembered. And so it was just, instead of me kind of
Totally.
coming at them,
Totally.
and a lot of my clients have talked about, adults will try to help, but they're really like kind of yelling or
Totally.
shaming, as
Totally.
opposed to getting curious and staying calm. And like the curiosity piece is key. And if
Yeah.
you lose
Totally.
that ability, if you kind of come at it, well, like, why didn't you can pause yourself and be like, sweetie, or whatever, whoever you're
Totally.
speaking to, whatever age, I'm going to take accountability. I lost my patience because I
Yeah.
was, concerned
That's
about
very
your
good.
mark,
Yeah.
whatever. And I need to do better. I need to
Yeah.
stay calm. I need to trust that you've got this. What do you need from me?
Yeah.
Can
Totally.
I help you in any
Life
way? And then
changing. Yeah.
bite your tongue.
It's hard.
Bite your tongue after
Totally.
that,
Totally. So, and this
Yeah.
is the thing, I don't know if I had mentioned to you, I've just finished being certified with in conscious parenting with Dr. Shafali, and it was
Woo-woo.
incredible. And this is exactly
Nice.
what it's about, because we spent years having to readjust our wordings. And my husband and daddy love him to pieces, but he is highly intelligent physiotherapist. Everything came easy to him. Why? Why are they doing that? Sort of that kind of dad. Bless him. He's had to be knocked down a peg or two to understand we've got to change it. And still he's like, why can't we just give them consequences? Why can't we just blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I know, babe, I know it's frustrating, but it's taken years. And I mean, my tongue, it's nearly not there anymore, because like truly, and I mean truly having to bite my tongue. And I sometimes once a month still have a bit of a flare up and just blah.
Yeah.
But it has changed our relationship. And what it is in my mind, trust. Even though in my heart I was like, I don't trust that she's going to do that. But the more I backed off, led by example, because we were a great family, we were hardworking, like this is the other thing, just being, it's about conscious parenting is about the parent, not the child.
Yeah.
And just exactly how you explained it. If you trust your child, for example, that child you're talking about, highly intelligent, wants that, right? So natural consequences for her are already playing out. So for a parent to come in and stand over and like, you've got to, shouldn't be done. I shouldn't say should, but a parent wouldn't need to do that. A parent would need to just talk the way you are.
It breaks their trust.
Totally.
It
Now,
breaks their trust.
totally. And that's what happened. Trust was broken. But on our children, all neurodiverse, and they are all amazing, but school is not the best place for neurodiverse children at times, because it's very structured. Anyway, we won't go into that. So we didn't have children that wanted to study or wanted to do that. And, so we've had to, again, not push it. You've got to go to school. You've got to get your grades, do the best you can. And that's kind of our bar, if that makes sense. So we've had to lower sort of our expectations, not the children's. So if they're if that's the way they want to go, let them be. If they're not studious, you've got to give them love and support in other ways. It's not what we want. That's the hardest thing, because us parents want them to go to uni and do this and go to college, but some kids will find that really hard. And the more that you point the finger, the more detached you're going to be.
Yeah, I think that we got to look at why, right?
Yeah.
So, I see so much in terms of intergenerational trauma, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
oppressive
Yeah.
system. So there's a lot that I see. I had a client that so I myself am neurodivergent. I got diagnosed with a learning disability in my second degree after I traveled around the world, lived overseas for 5 years, including Melbourne in Australia. And I always felt dumb. I never felt intelligent. So I actually am highly intelligent, but they can't measure the things that I'm into. They're not measuring how well I coach. There's no coaching mark in school.
Totally.
So I always excelled. I'm gifted in the arts.
Yeah.
I'm gifted in, lots of different things, storytelling, things like that, creativity. I was off the charts. In math, I wasn't. I always
Mhm.
say that my soul did not come down to this earth to do math. Like
No,
it just didn't.
no,
I love that there are people that do, right?
totally.
And that's the really beautiful part of humanity. And it's the lie that we are fed through our
That's what I mean.
education
The
system.
traditional,
And
the traditional education.
yeah, and we actually need to, if you have a child that is struggling academically,
Mm.
um, that inner belief that they are
Yeah,
not intelligent impacts their whole life, their
100%.
relationships, what they have, their
Everything.
abilities. Their light
Yep,
is glowing. It's going to dim more and more because they don't feel
absolutely.
good about themselves. They
That's
don't feel
right.
capable and worthy. So the fact that I run a business, the fact I've written a book that
Yep,
took 10 years to write, the fact that I've done all these things,
yep.
I might not have done them had I fit the mold,
No, you
like
wouldn't have. Yeah,
I
you
didn't
wouldn't
fit
have.
the mold,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So what I want to say about this is many years ago, I had a child that, I was in a class regularly as a substitute teacher, and I was walking around after I handed out their math, and math was something that I cried over for years.
Yeah.
And as a student when I was growing up. So as a
Mm.
teacher, I was, walking around, and they all already know that I was kind of like a secondary teacher for this class. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden I see one of the girls and she's just got her head down and sobbing, right? And so
Yeah.
I immediately go over to her and check in, and she said, I cannot do this math, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
sit down beside her and I say, besides math, what are you great at? Like, not
Yeah.
necessarily a school
Yeah.
subject. And she
Yeah.
said, well, and she lit up. I absolutely love horseback riding. And I was
Yeah.
like, great. So we were in a portable, like the
Yeah.
outside part of the school. You guys have that in
Yeah. Yeah.
Australia,
Yeah.
portable?
Yeah. We do. Yeah.
Okay, we're in a portable. And I said to her, somebody made the education system. People made it, right? It's people made, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that old. Like it's a couple
Yeah.
hundred years old, right?
Yeah.
If you imagine just beyond this, what if the most important subject in school, the
Was
one
horse.
that you would like have pressure from your family, and if you
Yeah.
didn't do
Yeah.
well, was horseback riding?
I
And
know.
what if you had to teach me, because I wouldn't know how to do it perfectly, and we would be riding through the portables. So
Yeah.
just that kind of like opening up
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
a space, like that this system is something that is people made, and that it
Totally.
cannot encapsulate a human
No,
being.
I
And
cannot.
so by allowing kind of like some questioning of that system allowed her to think beyond, right? And
Yeah.
start
That's
thinking, oh,
beautiful.
actually, I do have gifts, and
Yeah.
I am. So with this idea that parents, the biggest thing that I hear from parents, and I hope it's every parent,
Mm.
that truly means this and lives
Yes.
up to this, is that they want their child to be happy,
Yes.
period.
But do that. This is the problem is, yes, we all do. But what we've been through, it's happy with what we have with our expectations. And
Yes.
majority of parents I know,
Yeah.
like I've said this before, kids have had to do Kumon Kumon is maths every
Yeah,
day
I know it.
since they're
Yep.
6 years old. And yes, they're good at maths
Mhm.
now, and they're doing well at school. But I
Mhm.
just think, okay, well, that's worked out for your parents. But what happens if you
Yeah.
had a child that didn't like maths?
Yep.
Would you have then force them to the shell of themselves? Like, because parents do that. Some parents
Yes.
force and force and
Yes.
force to do math
Yes.
when their brain doesn't, it makes them feel dumb, which is
Mm-hmm.
happens all the time, Rachel. And that's what the biggest core of this
Mm-hmm.
conversation, these conversations, is exactly what you just said. Is like, what are you great at?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be math. It might not be math.
Yes. Yes. So a lot of the work that I'm doing now is connected to, I don't know if I'm imagine you might know, but I don't assume, like internal family systems. So looking at the different parts in somebody. So all of us have different parts. So,
Yeah,
naming those parts, right? So like as a parent, if you actually step back and reflect, humble yourself, right?
totally.
With your husband, wife,
Yeah,
whoever, if you have a person, if not, if you're a single parent, sit down, journal, and ask, what part of me like wants them to be happy? What do I
I
imagine
know.
happiness
Yeah,
is?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then you could even actually ask them, like, mommy wants you to be happy. This is my idea, but I want you to journal what means
What a
happiness for you. And then look
totally.
at it side by side. So you
Yeah,
actually have the data points of like, my idea of happiness is different than yours. Now, if they
totally.
trust you, they will write honestly.
Yeah,
so I think that the more that parents can take a step back
Yeah,
and start getting curious about
yes,
where their ideas are and really look at
totally,
them, right? Like
totally.
start really looking at, so the more, so, and then the other thing I was going to say in terms of my coaching practices, I'm doing a lot of work with somatic kind of awareness. So asking
Love it.
um the child,
Yeah.
right? So like when like I'm noticing their body language, their tone of voice, things like that. So if I say to them, how do you feel about, this, I give quote unquote homework, but it's always like fun things of like
Yeah.
organizing a bag with fidget toys, right?
Yeah.
So recently I said, like, I feel like you might need some fidget toys. How do you feel about that in terms of regulating, outside when you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed or sensory,
Mm,
wise? And then immediately the person said, "Ooh, I can do that." And I was
mm.
like, how does your body feel when you say that? And they're like, "Oh, okay." And they kind of did an internal body scan and was like, "I feel really light." And, I could see the
Yeah.
color blue, like
Beautiful.
light blue.
Yeah.
So then connecting that back. And then the
Beautiful.
same kind of question around, so we were talking about friends, right? Which
Mm.
is a huge thing in terms of like toxic friendship or bullying. And so one of the clients that I was working with said, I have this one friend, and I said, "Oh, I can hear from your voice. It doesn't feel totally, aligned with you. Is that correct?" And they were like, "Yeah, there's some like red flags." And I was like, "Oh, okay, tell me more." So they listed a bunch of red flags, which were major, by the way. And then I said, "Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. I want you to close your eyes, check in with your body, and see what you're feeling. If you can
Beautiful.
connect with it,
Yeah.
body felt sense." And they said, "I feel like my lungs are constricting, and I
Mm.
have no air." And I was like, "Oh, really great awareness. Like, not
Yeah.
good that you're feeling that, but great
No.
awareness."
Yeah.
Okay. And then we imagined like a different scenario of like, something else. And I said, "How are you feeling?" Oh, they said the people that they trust the most, right? And they listed, family member, a
Yep.
friend, and then they put me on the list too. And I
Mm.
know. And then so they said, yeah. And my eyes often well up in these
Oh, mine
sessions because
too. I cry for you. Yes, but it's beautiful. It's emotional. It's beautiful.
so, and then I said, when you imagine those three people, how does your body feel? And they said, like, the air is just like open and
Wow.
flowing.
Yeah.
So the more that the more that you as a parent can actually
Can
start doing
help
that with
them.
yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Totally.
then also help support them with that
Totally.
curiosity,
Yeah.
because our body is an internal compass of what's
Mm.
true for us, right? So then we get to see, like, when they try something and then you are asking them that curiosity of like, how do you feel when you like eat that food? Or how do you
Yeah.
feel when we're going here? Do you need something
Amazing.
else right now? Then they're going to actually know how to connect with like bigger needs to the point where
Totally.
they're like, oh, I do want to like create this product or go to college or,
Well, that doesn't
travel
feel right
abroad.
because that person's, yeah, treating me like crap.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Exactly.
And the thing is too, as you're sharing this incredible knowledge, um, to be able to get to the parents of
Mm,
preteens. Because the problem of it is, I find, and dealing and talking with other parents, you get to that sort of 11, 12, 13, and they're starting to head into the pre-teen, like that, so pre-preteens.
yeah.
They're not so open to that somatic stuff and whatever. So if you can start bringing this in from toddlerhood up to 10,
Mhm.
they'll have the tools and they'll want to use
Mm,
the tools. It's, I'm always using those tools now, and my children think I'm crazy, and I'm like, I own crazy. I own it. And then,
mm,
but then I hear something happen and their friends come over all the time, and their teenage friends feel safe here, and teenage friends tell
mm.
them they love me, and they
Yeah.
open up and tell me beautiful stuff that I know they can't tell their parents. And, you know, it's just, yeah. The
There
thing is,
needs
it's
to
not
be,
always going to, what I'm trying to say is lead by example, use it, try and get it implicated, try to get it introduced when they're little. But if you're sort of hearing this and it's pre-teens or teens, keep doing it. Keep, even if
well,
they
and
say
also
no.
like the thing, so recently I was working with a family, and it's actually grandparents that are raising a child because
Oh,
the mom
beautiful.
passed.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's
And so,
beautiful, but that's lovely. Yeah, okay.
but beautiful that they have stepped up and
Totally.
they love him so much. Anyways, but we were talking about how you know how can you use, like, instead, sometimes it's too intense for them like
Yeah.
to feel that interrogation, or this is like
Mm,
a skill, like we're going to try this breathing exercise and it's too intense. Like
sure.
even sometimes my best friend does this to me where I'm really upset about something, I'm dysregulated, and she'll be like, let's take a breath. And I'm like, I'm not ready to take a breath, like I'm not,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
feels,
Attack. It feels
it
like attack.
feels
Like
like
a, yeah.
almost condescending or
I was going to
something,
say,
like
yeah.
kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't feel, so sometimes I'm not open to that. Sometimes I am, but sometimes I'm
Yeah.
not. So I think it's more like, one, it's having a neutral person, I
Yeah.
think is a huge thing, right? And then the other thing is also bringing yourself as like bringing this in. So in this particular case, one of the grandparents had lost their parent when they were
Right.
a child, like a little bit older than this client.
Uh-huh.
So, but they never talked about it with their grandson.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so they said, yeah, like I don't want to talk about it, it's just not where I want to go. And I said, actually, I think that because your grandson doesn't talk about his grief, I
Yeah.
think that might be a perfect place to share little bits of your own journey and create that connection through that and that vulnerability and space so that
Yeah.
they feel open to that.
Yeah.
So the more that you kind of are talking about, like, hey, I'm actually checking in, and I can feel like a tightening in my chest right now. I'm really feeling frustrated. I need space. Like oftentimes adults think like we have to like make this like magical world that nothing
Totally.
bad happens to
Doesn't
anyone.
happen. Yeah.
And it's not true. And
Not true.
children
It doesn't
are
happen.
truth detectors,
Yeah.
right? They know
Yeah.
that you're not telling the truth. So I always
Totally.
say it's kind of like the elephant in the room. Bring yourself in. Like as an educator, when I'm feeling really overwhelmed and frustrated, when it's all these kids talking at once or whatever, I'll say, friends,
Mm.
I only have 2 ears. I'm totally overwhelmed. I cannot
Yeah.
hear you right now. One at
Yeah.
a time.
Totally.
So I use myself and say what's happening
That's
in
exactly.
order for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. It's
mhm.
beautiful. Look, like I said, I could talk to you all for hours and days. I'm sure I'll have you back on again because there's so many beautiful things. What I will do is I'm going to get your book, purchase your book. I'm going to have a read of it before, because I think this podcast will be, like I said, about maybe 5 weeks. So I really, really want to share this as much as I can, because wow,
Yeah.
you're amazing. And the work that you're doing, you are simplifying it. You are not only talking about like I said, the need for it, and here I am if you need me one-on-one, but your tools sound simple, easy to use, but they would be so effective. So I will be sharing you to everyone.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've really,
Yeah.
really enjoyed finally getting to have a big
Yeah.
conversation with you. And I know it's late over there, but thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, everybody who's been listening. And what I always say to every parent is don't give up hope. Keep
Yeah,
going until you
yeah,
find support. There are
beautiful.
people out there that can help you.
There
And
is.
my DMs are always open, so you can message me
Totally.
as well.
Totally. So just to finish up though, of all the links will be in
Oh,
the
sorry, I
bio.
thought we were finished.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, we are finished. I'm finishing off.
Yeah.
Now finishing off. Um,
Yeah.
I should have said this before. All links will be in bio. But can you
Yeah.
work with international clients one-on-one Zoom like this?
Yes. Yes, which
Yay!
is amazing. Which is amazing.
Yes,
That's actually one
totally.
of the things that my families talk about is that and it's so great because I know with therapy, like you are kind of like you can only work in certain areas, but I
Yeah.
work online
Oh
only.
my gosh, amazing.
And also actually with Australia, because I don't know, I'm imagining a lot of your listeners are from Australia. Um because of the time zone, so like my time at night fills up. That's why I work late at night,
Right.
because
Yep.
in America it's like after school, so I have back-to-back
Okay.
bookings,
Okay, great.
but I have spaciousness in the day right now.
Yay.
So,
Yay.
if you
Awesome.
are interested, reach
Oh my
out.
gosh. And I have so many people DM me because have just done a name change because I want to talk about this. It's not, I used to be Bub to Sleep, so it was just sleep, but now it's in the parenting realm. I have so many parents contact me like, where's the family counseling? Can I go to whatever? But now that we've spoken and I've talked to you, you are
Mm-hmm.
the person I would be sending people to. There is no doubt. You are the everything around this.
Oh,
Honestly, I feel very, very honored. I again get a bit teary. Very honored to have found you. I'm blessed, and yeah, you are someone that a lot of families are going to need. So keep being you, and thank you so much.
thank you. I'm
Oh,
teary-eyed too now. Thank you for
oh,
doing
thank
what you're
you.
doing.
Of course.
So beautiful.
Oh, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Okay, speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.